Exposed, the ultimate secret narcissists desperately need. Narcissists value loyalty. You heard that right. Perhaps more than anything else, a narcissist, or any toxic person, clings to an almost obsessive need for absolute, unquestioned loyalty from their partner, their friends, or anyone in their orbit. It is one of the paradoxes at the heart of narcissistic dynamics. As Dr. Ramoni Dervisula, a leading expert on narcissistic abuse, explains, what narcissists seek isn't genuine loyalty grounded in mutual respect, but rather blind allegiance, a loyalty stripped of reciprocity, existing solely to protect their fragile sense of self. Of course, your first reaction may be disbelief. You may think, how could they value loyalty? These are the same people who betray, deceive, and discard without hesitation. Isn't this the most hypocritical thing in the world? And you'd be right to feel that way. Psychologists like Dr. George Simon, who has studied manipulative personalities for decades, would call this a classic example of narcissistic double standards. What they demand is not what they offer. But here's where it gets psychologically twisted. To the narcissist, loyalty is not about fairness, it's about survival. Their survival. Narcissists can, and often do, expect unwavering loyalty without ever providing it in return. While some people equate narcissism directly with infidelity, not all narcissists cheat sexually. Dr. Craig Malkin, author of Rethinking Narcissism, reminds us that narcissism exists on a spectrum, and while many narcissists betray through affairs, others express their disloyalty in different ways: emotional neglect, gaslighting, financial abuse, or controlling behavior. Even without physical cheating, their relationships often drip with betrayal in subtler yet equally destructive forms. The paradox lies here. A narcissist can deeply value something they themselves refuse to give. In their inner world, loyalty is not a principle. It is a shield against shame and abandonment. To wear the narcissist hat, as Dr. Ramoni puts it, is to think like this: I cannot bear the humiliation or emotional devastation of you betraying me. If you leave, if you cheat, if you reject me, it confirms the very void I work so hard to hide, that I am unworthy. I can't handle that. So your loyalty must be absolute, no exceptions. This is why so many narcissists frame disloyalty in broad, suffocating terms. Even something as natural as confiding in your parents or maintaining close friendships can be twisted into betrayal. Yet here lies the hypocrisy. While demanding your unwavering loyalty, they often continue pursuing their own gratification in secret. Dr. Harriet Lerner, who writes extensively about shame, notes that shame-avoidant personalities will go to great lengths to prevent exposure. For narcissists, this means if they cheat or lie, they will hide it, not just to protect themselves from consequences, but to avoid the unbearable thought that you might do to them what they are doing to you. Their greatest fear is reciprocity. They want betrayal to remain one-sided. This is the essence of the narcissistic mindset. They do not want you to resist. They do not want you to mirror back their actions. They want you silent, obedient, and bound by invisible chains of fear and loyalty. Dr. Kristen Neff, who specializes in self-compassion, warns that this one-sided dynamic leaves victims depleted, constantly sacrificing, constantly justifying, constantly holding themselves to a standard that their partner does not meet. Over time, this erodes self-worth, trapping the victim in a cycle where loyalty feels like survival, even as it quietly destroys them. So how can someone recover or protect themselves when caught in this dynamic? Psychologists suggest several strategies. First, clarity. Name the behavior for what it is. When you can call double standards what they are, control tactics, you begin to see through the fog. Second, boundaries. Dr. Henry Cloud, in his seminal work Boundaries, emphasizes that loyalty without reciprocity is exploitation. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to demand equality. Finally, reclaim self-validation. Because narcissists thrive on external validation, they pressure their victims to provide it endlessly. Turning inward, practicing self-compassion, and building a support system outside the relationship can restore a sense of agency. In the end, loyalty in the hands of a narcissist is less about love and more about power. They demand that you fight fire with nothing, that you stand motionless as their flames consume the relationship. But real healing begins when you refuse to remain still, when you recognize that loyalty without respect is bondage, and when you step into the freedom of drawing lines they cannot cross. Because loyalty, in its truest form, is not something demanded, it is something earned. At the core of a narcissist's world is a craving for loyalty, though not the kind of mutual, balanced loyalty that healthy relationships are built upon. What they hunger for is blind devotion, the type of loyalty that requires no questions, no resistance, and no accountability. Psychologists often describe this as a need for narcissistic supply, a steady stream of validation and compliance that reassures the narcissist of their superiority. Dr. Ramoni Dervisula explains that narcissists see loyalty not as a bond between equals but as a tool of control. To them, loyalty means servitude, and the moment that servitude is disrupted, the narcissist experiences it as a threat to their very identity. This is why narcissists carefully curate an inner circle made up of yes-men. These are the friends, partners, colleagues, or even family members who will nod along, who will defend the narcissist's reputation at all costs, and who will excuse behavior that would otherwise be considered unacceptable. Psychologists like Dr. George Simon, who studies manipulative personalities, note that this environment is intentional. By surrounding themselves with enablers, narcissists protect themselves from accountability and create a buffer against shame. The yes-men become shields, absorbing and silencing any challenges that might expose the narcissist's flaws. But what happens when someone dares to push back? When a partner or friend introduces accountability into the room, the narcissist reacts with sudden and ruthless rejection. They may discard you, exile you, or turn the entire group against you. This reaction isn't random. It's a survival strategy. To the narcissist, accountability feels like annihilation. Dr. Harriet Lerner explains that shame-avoidant personalities cannot tolerate being seen as wrong or flawed. So instead of reflecting, they punish. They remove you from the circle because your presence threatens the carefully constructed image they are desperate to maintain. To outsiders, this cycle can seem foolish. Why would anyone cut off someone who genuinely cares enough to hold them accountable? But this is the logic of narcissism. They demand blind loyalty, not constructive honesty. And when they find individuals willing to play this role, what psychologists call flying monkeys, the narcissist clings to them. These flying monkeys don't just passively support. They actively defend, excuse, and often participate in the narcissist's toxic behavior. Dr. Craig Malkin describes this as shared narcissism, where enablers borrow a sense of power and superiority by aligning themselves with the narcissist. In celebrity culture, this phenomenon becomes amplified. Celebrity narcissists don't just have a small circle of flying monkeys. They command an entire army of supporters. Psychologists who study cult dynamics, such as Dr. Margaret Singer, have long drawn parallels between narcissistic abuse and cult-like influence. Followers rally to defend the celebrity, rationalize their harmful behavior, and even attack those who dare to speak the truth. The loyalty of these followers becomes weaponized, turning accountability into treason and ensuring that the narcissist remains untouchable. This is why many psychologists argue that every cult leader is deeply narcissistic, if not also psychopathic. Cult leaders embody the extreme end of this spectrum. Their survival depends on surrounding themselves with unquestioning followers who will sacrifice truth, morality, and even their own safety to preserve the leader's image. The parallels between everyday narcissistic relationships and cult structures are striking. The demand for blind loyalty, the fear of abandonment, the punishment of dissent, and the elevation of the narcissist's image above all else. And at the root of all of this is fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of exposure, fear of being left alone with the emptiness they cannot soothe. Many psychologists agree that narcissists cannot generate internal validation. They rely entirely on external sources to confirm their worth. Dr. Heinz Kohut, one of the pioneers of self-psychology, described narcissists as having a fragile self that depends on others to mirror back their significance. This is why loyalty becomes an obsession. To the narcissist, loyalty is not just desirable, it is existential. Without it, they are forced to face the void of their own inadequacy, a reality they spend their lives avoiding. For those caught in this cycle, the impact can be devastating. Victims often find themselves isolated, gaslit, and forced to choose between their own truth and the narcissist's demands for allegiance. Recovery, psychologists suggest, begins with awareness. Recognizing the pattern is the first step in breaking free. Boundaries are critical. Dr. Henry Cloud emphasizes that loyalty without reciprocity is not love but exploitation. Rebuilding self-worth requires stepping outside the narcissist's orbit, cultivating supportive relationships, and learning to provide yourself the validation that the narcissist once demanded. Ultimately, the narcissist's obsession with loyalty reveals less about love and more about control. Their demand is simple but destructive: stand with me no matter what. Never question. Never leave. But true loyalty can never be coerced. It is earned through respect, reciprocity, and authenticity. And the moment you reclaim that truth, you begin to step out of the narcissist's shadow and into the freedom of your own light. For the narcissist, validation is oxygen. They cannot generate it internally, so they turn outward, desperately seeking it from the people around them. Psychologists like Dr. Heinz Kohut, who pioneered self-psychology, observed that narcissists possess what he called a fragile self that is incapable of stable self-worth without external mirroring. This is why blind loyalty becomes so intoxicating for them. When people around them never question, never push back, and simply comply, it serves as the perfect narcotic, soothing their insecurities and shielding them from shame. As Dr. Ramoni Dervisula often explains, loyalty for a narcissist doesn't symbolize love, it symbolizes validation. It becomes their drug of choice, and they crave it in endless doses. The logic is simple, yet devastating in its impact. If you are blindly loyal to them, you reinforce not just their actions but their worldview. When they cross a line, and you excuse it, you don't just comfort them, you legitimize their behavior. This is why psychologists compare narcissistic validation to an addictive cycle. Each reassurance, each excuse, each defense acts like another hit of the drug, pushing the narcissist deeper into dependence. Instead of cultivating growth or accountability, they build an echo chamber where only their distorted version of reality survives. And the more you give, the more they want. Like any addict, enough is never enough. Consider a scenario where a narcissist has cheated. This is the perfect case study for how loyalty functions in their world. Imagine two people in the narcissist's life. The first is a friend who dares to speak the truth. Psychologists call this introducing accountability into the relationship, and narcissists see it as betrayal. The friend might say, "You need to stop cheating. You're destroying your relationship. If she leaves, you'll be alone, and it'll be no one's fault but yours. I care about you, but this behavior reflects badly on all of us. You need to change." This is what a healthy dynamic looks like: empathy paired with boundaries, love expressed through truth. Yet to the narcissist, this feels like an attack. Accountability threatens the fragile mask they wear, forcing them to face the shame they work so hard to bury. Now compare this with the second friend, the archetypal flying monkey. This friend says, "Everybody cheats. It's normal. If your girlfriend can't forgive you, she's insecure. You're a great guy. She should be grateful to have you. You didn't do anything wrong." This is what blind loyalty looks like. Psychologists warn that such enablers don't just shield the narcissist, they become part of the abuse cycle. By excusing destructive actions, they not only validate the narcissist but also invalidate the victim's pain. In this way, flying monkeys magnify the harm, adding gaslighting to injury, and giving the narcissist permission to continue without consequence. This difference between accountability and blind loyalty has enormous implications for both the narcissist and the victim. For the narcissist, the enabler provides a temporary shield against shame, but at a cost, it reinforces destructive patterns and prevents genuine growth. For the victim, however, it is doubly damaging. Not only do they endure betrayal from the narcissist, but they are also silenced by a network of enablers who minimize their pain. Dr. Lundy Bancroft, an expert on abusive dynamics, points out that this collective invalidation leaves victims questioning their reality, eroding their self-trust, and trapping them in cycles of self-blame. So what can victims do in the face of this toxic collusion? Psychologists suggest several strategies. First, Recognize the dynamic for what it is: a system designed to protect the narcissist at the expense of truth. Awareness strips the enablers of their power to distort your reality. Second, build a countercircle of support. Dr. Kristen Neff, who researches self-compassion, emphasizes the importance of seeking allies who validate your feelings rather than dismiss them. Finally, set firm boundaries. Dr. Henry Cloud reminds us that loyalty without reciprocity is exploitation, not love. By refusing to participate in the narcissist's validation economy, you begin to reclaim your own agency and self-worth. At its core, the narcissist's obsession with loyalty is less about devotion and more about fear. The fear of shame, exposure, and abandonment. Blind loyalty is their shield, their drug, their survival strategy. But for those caught in their orbit, it is a trap that drains self-esteem and distorts truth. The path to freedom lies not in out-loyaltying the narcissist, but in reclaiming your voice, surrounding yourself with truth-tellers, and stepping outside the cycle of validation that keeps the narcissist and their flying monkeys in control. Notice how stark the contrast is between those two responses. The first friend delivered truth with compassion, holding the narcissist accountable and gently urging them toward change. Yet those are the voices a narcissist cannot tolerate. Psychologists like Dr. Harriet Lerner emphasize that accountability is kryptonite to the narcissist's fragile ego because it pierces the illusion of perfection they work so hard to maintain. So rather than embracing that guidance, they cut such people out, exiling them like traitors. The second friend, however, the one who coddled, excused, and twisted the blame, was rewarded with closeness. To the narcissist, this type of loyalty feels like gold. It is not just affirmation, but absolution, a complete erasure of responsibility. Psychologists call this externalizing blame, and it's a key mechanism by which narcissists protect themselves from shame. And let's be clear, narcissism is not confined to men, nor is it bound to a particular culture, orientation, or identity. Women can be narcissists. LGBTQIA+ individuals can be narcissists. Narcissism is not picky. It transcends gender, age, or community. This universality is crucial to understand, because victims often dismiss red flags when the abuser doesn't fit the stereotype. Dr. Ramoni Dervisula reminds us that narcissism is less about demographics and more about patterns of behavior, patterns of entitlement, lack of empathy, and manipulation. Anyone can enact them, and anyone can be harmed by them. At the heart of it, narcissists behave this way because it benefits them. Every move is calculated through the lens of self-preservation and control. Dr. George Simon, who has studied manipulative personalities extensively, describes this as covert aggression, strategies designed to dominate without appearing overtly hostile. Whether it's demanding blind loyalty or punishing you for maintaining connections outside the relationship, the logic is always self-serving. To the narcissist, cutting you off from family, friends, or any form of external support ensures that their control remains unchallenged. Even something as ordinary as visiting your parents or having lunch with a longtime friend can be recast as betrayal. The bar for disloyalty is set impossibly low because the true goal is isolation. For the victim, this distortion is devastating. Slowly, loyalties shift away from a network of healthy relationships and become tethered exclusively to the narcissist. Psychologists call this process social isolation, a tactic also found in cult dynamics, designed to make the victim dependent on the abuser for identity, stability, and even self-worth. Dr. Lundy Bancroft explains that when abusers control who you talk to and label ordinary interactions as betrayal, they erode your independence. Over time, you begin to doubt your own right to connect with others, mistaking obedience for love. This is not loyalty. It is entrapment masquerading as devotion. But here lies the critical pivot: empowerment. Psychologists agree that recovery starts with recognizing the manipulation for what it is. Awareness restores clarity. Once you see that loyalty has been twisted into control, you can begin to set boundaries. Dr. Henry Cloud, in his work on boundaries, stresses that real loyalty is mutual. It respects individuality while nurturing connection. When someone demands blind loyalty that severs you from your support system, that is exploitation, not partnership. Victims can reclaim power by re-establishing old connections, seeking therapeutic support, and surrounding themselves with truth-tellers rather than enablers. Healing means building a circle where loyalty is rooted in respect, not fear. In the end, narcissists will always hunger for blind devotion, because it cushions them from the shame they cannot face alone. But you are not required to provide that fuel. By stepping out of their script, by choosing your own voice, your own connections, and your own truth, you dismantle the illusion that they can only thrive if you stay silent. And that act of reclaiming loyalty, not as submission but as self-respect, is the beginning of freedom.